whether it has something with the topic to do or not, but we should have had 3 presentations, but we will only have one. As for the first presentation, Dr. Basiru is unable to attend and sends his deeply regrets. And for the second presentation, we have been unable to get in touch with them. So we are left with one. The last one is going to be the first, as the Bible says, but it's an interesting presentation. Rethinking organizational structures to support digital innovation from Lindsay Wharton and Devin Soper from Florida State University. Lindsay Wharton is the interim director of service strategies at Florida State University Libraries, and in that role, she provides oversights of the teaching, learning, and engagement unit, encompassing instruction, reference, outreach, digital media, and online learning services. Lindsay leads library integration within the learning management system, coordinates the e-textbook program, and serves as a liaison to the College of Social Work Office of Distance Learning and International Programs. And Devin Soper is the interim Associate Dean for Technology and Digital Scholarship and Director of the Office of Digital Research and Scholarship at Florida State University Libraries. His interim role includes oversight of library units focused on digital infrastructure, STEM libraries, and web development. And as a director, he supervises several initiatives related to open publishing, digital humanities, projects and pedagogy, and digital cultural heritage technologies. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you for joining our presentation this morning. And we're excited to be here and hope that we can make up for the other sessions the best that we can. Thank you for those introductions, Lars. So today we're going to be talking about rethinking organizational structures to support digital innovation. So what we're really thinking about is a vision for supporting the growth and development of innovative digital services and libraries through a creative and unconventional organizational structure. As libraries continue to undergo a digital transformation, we have experienced a flourish of innovative services, from digital publishing to agile learning support, yet the question of how to support these services remains open. So starting out with a little bit of background and context, our proposal stemmed from an organizational review at Florida State University Libraries. The review sought to reorganize our research and learning services division into a more manageable portfolio and to review the organizational structure to support the library's strategic initiatives. So this involved hiring consultants and gathering feedback from our employees into what was and what was not working at the libraries. Our libraries, like many libraries, have a blended model. We have some small units of functional specialists, some hybrid units that focus both on academic liaison work and newer services, and other units that are comprised entirely of more traditional roles, such as our subject librarians. Our cross-divisional teams, such as our OER team, mostly form spontaneously and informally without a clear mandate. While some of these teams have been really successful, others have faltered or disbanded over time due to a lack of direction and decision-making authority. This lack of formality has led to challenges for launching and maintaining innovative services, as well as an overall inability to respond swiftly to the emergent needs of our campus.
So it's a common refrain in the library literature that academic libraries are under intense pressure to change due to massive technological changes in broader society and concomitant changes to the nature, scope, and methods of modern academic research. At the same time, academic libraries can be resistant to change, both structurally and with respect to the preferences of library employees. And some would argue that even when we do have a will to change, we often lack the capacity to do so effectively because we typically don't have adequate resources to devote to traditional planned change management approaches. The literature on change management suggests that in contexts where change is ubiquitous and organizations are unable to adapt quickly enough through these traditional planned change approaches, it can be valuable to instead embrace emergent change approaches that create a flexible environment and prepare people for the process of change itself instead of for specific targeted changes. Scholars of change management also suggest that emergent change approaches are more likely to succeed within organizational structures that are flatter and less hierarchical, in order to encourage people to freely identify new possibilities and engage leadership in a dialogue about them. All of these observations lead us to conclude that the time may be ripe to rethink the way that we structure our organizations to better support the need for ongoing change and innovation. So just to highlight some quotations that help to illustrate the point we're making here. Wolfram Horstman, writing in 2018, said that libraries face the dilemma that the transformation of the academic information system is faster than the inherent transformation capacity of libraries. And scholar of change management, Jeffrey Phillips, writing in 2021, said emergent change advocates find that change may happen too fast for an organization to use a planned approach. Change is ubiquitous, and emergent change concentrates on preparing employees for the action of change instead of focusing on a specific transformation. So in our experience at FSU Libraries, we've noticed a number of problems related to our organizational structure and the definition and distribution of the roles therein. One of the problems is the placement of positions with newer functional specialties within units that otherwise consist of more traditional roles. Often, these functional specialists are asked to take on part-time subject liaison duties in addition to their other work. And while we do have some exceptional professionals who have flourished in these hybrid roles, there are many cases where the opposite is true. For example, we've spoken to many colleagues in these roles who have expressed feelings of burnout, isolation, and a lack of support for their work, in addition to complaints about the unreasonable workload. Some of these individuals have since left our organization or the library profession itself, and others have ultimately ended up neglecting one aspect of their work in favor of the other because they feel unable to succeed in both. In addition, situating these roles within more traditional units and divisions has led to structural challenges. For example, people in these roles can struggle to successfully advocate for the resources that they need to build new services when the majority of their immediate colleagues may not value or understand these new services and indeed actively advocate for the allocation of resources to more traditional services.
So this is where we come in with our proposal for a new model. Our proposal for a digital strategy and innovation unit would provide the culture and environment for a collaborative and creative team to focus on digital projects, programs, and services. This new division would include positions focused on the provision of new services in digital scholarship, scholarly communication, distance and online learning, digital media, and accessibility, all reporting to 2 co-directors. Uniting functional specialists focusing on these newer library services would allow for a team with complementary skill sets and expertise to efficiently and effectively collaborate to cultivate a culture of emergent change, innovation, and risk-taking. Our proposed unit is driven by our local context and speaks to the needs of our campus while taking into account our existing personnel, services, and strengths. This would be a fluid unit devoted to engagement with new services, and it would improve the overall library organization and better posed to address lack of resources, burnout, and the many stresses faced by academic libraries today. Our proposal is a call to consider radical reorganization and transformative teams that foster creativity, enthusiasm, and flexibility as a path to further integrating into campus-wide digital initiatives.
All right, so this mini organizational chart should help to explain the model that we envision. You can see that the department is led by 2 co-directors who report directly to the Dean of Libraries. And we'll explain why we chose the co-director model in more detail later. But for now, we believe that having a new department like this report directly to the Dean is important for a number of reasons. First, it leads to a flatter structure, which, as we've seen, is often held to be more conducive to innovation than more traditional vertical structures. And second, it recognizes the inherent difficulty of developing new services and gives this work the support that it needs and deserves through a direct line to the Dean. And third, it mitigates the structural barriers that I just mentioned that can arise when people who are tasked with developing new services are situated within a division that is otherwise highly traditional. You'll also notice that each of the co-directors has 4 direct reporting lines, as well as dotted reporting lines to their counterparts' direct reports. This is intended to signify that each co-director will act as a leader for everyone in the department, even if they only have 4 direct reports for administrative purposes. Similarly, as we'll explain more later on, the entire department will embrace the principles of co-leadership, such that each person will be empowered to lead work in their respective areas of expertise, identify new opportunities and challenges, and communicate about them openly with their colleagues and with both co-directors. As Lindsay mentioned, the specific job titles here are informed by our own local context, but the model itself is not dependent on them. A different organization with different needs might choose to include positions that are more focused on research data services or digital scholarship, for instance.
Centering people and relationships in our approach is essential to the goal of developing future-facing library services in a way that enables people to feel supported and empowered in their work. This generates new opportunities for collaboration among positions and teams that share a common purpose, enabling individuals to mutually reinforce each other in their work on digital projects, services, strategy. This frame builds upon the current research in library administration on authentic leadership and the importance of relationships to transformative leadership and innovation. By changing our structure to create a new division of functional specialists focused on innovative services, it provides the people in these roles with a unified sense of purpose and empowerment that comes with a shared focus on innovation. In addition to giving them an opportunity to strengthen relationships with one another and benefit from the various relationships that they have respectively developed both within the libraries and with external campus partners. In this way, our model not only promises to increase motivation and a sense of fulfillment within the division, but also creates space for the development and marketing of newer services in ways that might not have been possible each of these roles were in different units or divisions.
Okay, so a little bit about fostering cross-divisional collaboration. We believe that this model and the people in this new department would actually enjoy more freedom to collaborate with colleagues in other divisions, both because cross-divisional collaboration would be core to the mission of the new department, and because the individuals in the new department would feel better supported to engage in collaborative work. In addition to this, there are various strategies that could be employed to ensure that the people in this new department would collaborate extensively with colleagues across the library. One strategy for fostering collaboration that's been employed by many academic libraries involves the formation of cross-divisional functional teams that focus on both traditional and innovative service areas. This strategy would enable members of the new department to collaborate closely with colleagues in other divisions who are involved in developing and providing similar services and who possess complementary expertise. So as you can see in this mini organizational chart, we have in the blue boxes, a data management librarian who's a chair of a functional team focused on data services, and an instruction librarian who's chairing a library instruction team. Both of those teams could include team members from the digital strategy and innovation department. And in addition, dotted reporting lines could be created between the chairs of those teams and the co-directors of the DSI department in order to ensure that there is ongoing communication, collaboration, and accountability.
So digital strategy and innovation embraces a model of shared leadership as a boon for inclusivity, creativity, and innovation. Horizontal leadership structures value authenticity and trust and have the potential to transform how we work together. Co-leadership also provides a platform for a larger number of individuals to assume leadership roles and an opportunity to reimagine how our library organizations could operate more equitably and inclusively in line with our anti-racist goals. It prompts a critical yet necessary analysis of equity in organizations, from pay to unequal expectations. Collaborative forms of leadership improve decision-making through a diversity of thought and perspective. While this could entail less efficiency, it ensures accountability. The shared leadership model provides built-in flexibility and agility in organizational leadership. This not only allows for managers to build stronger networks of peer support, but also embraces the ever-present organizational changes such as professional leave, sabbaticals, turnovers, etc. It's clear that relationships are key to our proposed model, and this should be reflected in the shared leadership of the unit as well. As higher organizations and libraries grapple with important questions of diversity and inclusion, co-leadership challenges an accepted hegemony of power. Co-leadership better aligns with a culture of empathy.
So these diagrams from Jackson et al. Help to illustrate the structure and dynamics of the co-leadership model that we're endorsing. And as you can see in the two frames on the left, showing relationships between leaders and followers at the dyadic and group levels, the structure is clear and simple, with each follower in communication with a solitary leader. This is highly traditional. I'm sure that we're all familiar with it from our own organizations. As you can see in the frame on the right, however, co-leadership at the group level is considerably more flexible and dynamic, with each follower benefiting from the direction of multiple leaders who themselves influence each other. As Jackson et al. Explained in their paper, these dynamics of co-leadership at the group level are an important component of transformational leadership as a shared process where an individual might step forward to lead or back to follow, depending on the context and the moment and the skills and knowledge required. And this is precisely the flexibility and freedom that we believe is a boon to innovation and emergent change.
One benefit of presenting this proposal to our library leadership, the consultants, and our colleagues is we had many opportunities to receive feedback and criticism. As our model questions many of the conventional perspectives of academic library organizational structure. The first criticism that we heard was that our model would starve other library divisions of funding and resources. By allocating resources to support newer roles, newer programs, traditional library functions would fall behind. Also, displacing creative, innovative personnel from other library departments would starve other units of innovation. We counter that progressive reorganization is necessary for digital transformation and to strengthen the library as a whole. Our proposed unit does not include every cutting edge service or initiative at the libraries. This is happening at smaller scale across the entire organization at many different levels. But at a time when the vast majority of library budgets continue to be allocated to traditional services and resources, this shift would fund and support innovation to align with strategic goals. The other aspect of our proposal that was met with criticism is the co-director model and shared leadership. Many may question whether it's a sound to base positions, units, divisions on the people in those positions. But as I spoke on above, this model adopts a frame of people and relationships at the center of the unit. This may mean that priorities, workflows, services change as personnel changes, but this is not uncommon in current library practices. Our model would proactively account for these changes through a foundation of collaboration, trust, and agility. As the reorganization continues to unfold at our libraries, we do not anticipate our model to be adopted into practice, at least for the time being, but it still could be a possibility in the future. The final report on the reorganization echoed several of the concerns we identified in our proposal: tension between functional specialists and academic liaisons, a lack of authority and support for cross-divisional teams, and the importance of fostering innovation for staying relevant in academic research environments. Emergent change in libraries can be accelerated through the creation of departments that are explicitly charged with innovation and the development of new services that meet emergent needs. This model is especially advantageous to the work of functional specialists who are hired to develop new services. These professionals can experience structural barriers when placed in traditional departments, leading to burnout, or what many have coined the Great Resignation. Adopting a people-focused organizational perspective provides the space and support to innovate, where the benefits and alignment with inclusivity greatly outweigh the limitations. Rethinking library organizations to support innovation requires critical reflection and introspection into our successes as well as our failures. A unit grounded in innovation and focused on people and relationships will provide a new era of digital transformation in academic libraries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lindsay and Devin. I think there are people here in the audience who recognize your questions. And I liked very much that you said question, conversation, solution. So I would like to invite some of you to comment on your own work on organizational issues in your libraries, because I think we can agree upon that there are no such thing as a perfect organization map that fits all. The process is important. The local context is also important. It's in a way a discussion about leaving people behind, or but also building up the specialists. And I think you described the challenges with your model very well. Do we have any questions and comments? Please come forward.
Thank you. I think there are convergences between the two models, but sincerely, you are in advance in regard of my university, because the problem in my university is we have always a traditional vision of libraries, and all the digital parts. There are some people who are working about that, but the majority of the activities are done by an administration of research and so on, not directly affected to libraries. We're working about the thesis for repositories. We help people to find resources like all the universities, but for example, the open educational resource is not in the portfolio of libraries. There's a strong differences between our models, but it's a will of the university where people are doing what. And we expect in the future, but it's not actually, we expect in the future that the general administration of libraries will merge with other administration that's working about the same thematics, like the access to resource and the support to research. But I appreciate your presentation because for me, it's very interesting and educative model. Thank you for that. It's a comment? You could like that?
Yeah, thank you. Would you like to comment?
I have one thing. So in my role at Florida State University, I've mostly been the extended campus and distance services librarian. And I was hired 8 years ago, and that was a brand new role. And I was trying to figure out how we could connect distance learners to the library. And I can tell you that 8 years later, it's, I'm not saying the work is done, but in a way, we've kind of moved past that. Now, so much of what we do at the library is just integrated into distance learning online on campus. But the skill set and the experience that gave me has allowed me to sort of pivot and focus on other needs of our campus. So being more involved in OER, affordability efforts, things like that. And I think that by having the experience as a functional specialist, it's about sort of, you know, risk taking, trying new things. And I appreciate the opportunity and the space to be able to do that in my organization. And I think that it's really prepared me to try different things. And sometimes things change. Sometimes programs change. We have initiatives, we end initiatives, we have new goals. And so I think we just have to be really flexible and agile. Devin, do you have anything?
I guess I'd also say that a lot of these newer services that we mentioned that would be situated within this new department are really the result of like extensive collaboration and partnership with other partners who have similar missions on campus. So to the extent that we're doing work around research impact analysis, we're partnering closely with the Office of Institutional Research and the Office of Research, and Lindsay's role as extended campus and distance services librarian, I believe is like a very close collaboration with our Office of Distance Learning. So it's just, I guess, one of the ways that our libraries is trying to innovate and expand our portfolio of services through partnerships with campus units that maybe would be more traditionally thought of as like the home of that kind of work. So it's been really interesting.
Am I right to say that the big trends in organization in libraries is that we don't get more resources and we have challenges to with new services? So we see a lot of libraries merging. We get more specialized services, and we see a move from organization based on geography to more functional organization. And I think you have chosen a demanding organization model, which will function if the co-directors can cooperate. So, and I guess the situation is that we will have to have we have to be ready to change our organization every second year or so. It's a going on discussion on organization in every library. Yeah.
I will mention in our introductions, we're both in interim roles right now. Our library is, we're hiring one AD and we have another AD retiring. And so that's why this reorg, it was really us, we're in different divisions. We work closely together, but it was that this is a time to sort of think about things differently and at least propose something. And looking at organization, doing the research, I think this is the time to try and be creative.
First, thank you for the presentation. It's very interesting, thought-provoking. And as I was listening, I was thinking about how you talked about the relationship to the library dean, and then you spoke about some other relationships. But how, within the libraries, how does it relate to other assistant deans or the AULs, or how do the co-directors relate? Are they part of that group? Is there a cabinet? Do they have the relationship to build the cross-functional teams that in the way that you're envisioning them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And one that came up when we made this proposal was, would these co-directors serve as part of the senior leadership team with the associate deans and the dean and so on? And it's a great question. I think ideally they should have some representation at that table. But even if they didn't, we think that like the mere fact of them being able to report directly to the dean would be more advantageous to this new department than if they were situated as one department alongside many other traditional departments reporting to an associate dean who is then reporting to the dean. One of the issues that prompted this organizational review, along with the retirement of one AD leaving and another retiring, was some structural issues that arose in our research and learning services division, which is by far the biggest division in our libraries, and has a huge service portfolio. And it just seemed to be the case that all of the departments within that division felt like they had not adequate or inadequate support. And it was just too much for the associate dean to basically convey all of the needs that they had up to senior leadership and to also communicate everything down to that many people. So this would, by sort of separating out this one department, we'd hope that that would be one way of sort of mitigating those issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are there any questions from the virtual participants?
Yes, there are a few. The first one comes from Kimberly Sweetman from the University of New Hampshire, and she writes, I recognize some of the elements you are proposing in your own recently introduced team-based structure. You mentioned that your proposal is unlikely to be adopted. Are there any elements that you can adopt? She continues with, through our own team-based structure transition, I have learned that sometimes you have to take some initial steps while people develop their appetite for an understanding of change.
I will say that, we presented this to our dean directly. We've had many conversations with our colleagues, with senior leadership. We were never told all the way no. People liked hearing our ideas, and it was never, it said, this isn't no, it's just not right now. Devin's currently serving as our AD of our Technology and Digital Scholarship. So we're both in interim roles for the next 6 months. But I think that this idea, especially, it seems like the dotted line structure is becoming a little more prevalent. And we're starting to really talk about what that means for evaluation, for creating more sort of like peer mentoring support in our organization. And I think that there's other elements as well. I think that we're going to continue to see our teams change in the next couple of years as we have new leadership. And I will say that, part of this, like as a thought piece and writing this paper together, has only, I will say, strengthened my belief that this is something that we should try. And, one of the things I loved about coming to our libraries, we were told that, it's okay to fail. It's okay to try something. And I think that when we are at a point where resources are scarce, we're trying to do as much as we can to meet the emergent needs on campus, trying something structurally is exciting. So I think we're going to be able to implement small things at a time.
Also, I think the notion of cross-divisional functional teams is something that we'll definitely be exploring implementing in a more systematic way at our organization over the next 6 to 12 months. As Lindsay mentioned, they've heretofore sort of arisen mostly spontaneously with, in some cases, a lack of structure. And we're taking a close look at that following the consultants' review of our organization. That was one of the main recommendations that they made is you need more of these teams. They need to be more accountable to leadership. They need to be better supported. And so some elements of the department that we proposed could be implemented within that sort of like cross-divisional functional team model.
More virtual questions?
Yes, there's a question from Ms. Heather Cunningham, and she writes, can you describe how non-librarian staff, such as support staff and technicians, who often belong to unions with strict collective agreements, fit into this model?
Both of the teams that we lead now have faculty librarians as well as support staff. My team is actually mostly support staff, and they were consulted during this process as well. I got feedback from all of my team. We have 2 new people sort of doing our digital media support and like including even their perspectives as new to the libraries, new to this idea, and making sure their voices are heard. I think the horizontal structure that we're talking about goes beyond the shared leadership, but I think that it's more equity between librarians and staff. I think it's including more people in decision making, which is going to improve the decisions that are made, I truly believe. And so while there is a librarian staff divide at our institution, I think by really looking at some of our really vertical structures and how we can make this more horizontal. That's one of the main things I heard from my staff when we were coming up with ideas, providing feedback to the consultants. And I think that's something we want to embrace in the way that we would all work together.
Yeah, it's in the more traditionally structured units in our libraries, it's not uncommon for it to be a structure that's like 5 levels deep, with staff reporting to like a single librarian, reporting to a director, reporting to an associate dean, reporting to a dean. And sometimes that's like arrayed with, you know, like each 4 librarians in a unit each have 1 staff person reporting to them. And it's just a hyper vertical structure. So what we're envisioning, we think, as Lindsay said, would actually create more equity and help to address some of that, you know, faculty staff divide that sometimes comes into play.
And finally, there's a comment from Plato Smith from the University of Florida. And he writes, sometimes your effort is like a river flowing under land, and when well day surfaces miles away. For example, ORI-CID API adoption by research took 5 years to fruition, university-wide policy draft since 2019. Keep up the good work.
I mean, one of the ways me and Devin first started working together was back in like 2016. We started our OER efforts at the library. And it was sort of like this idea of like, there's this problem, let's do this. And I mean, it's 2022 and we've made progress, but we haven't made enough progress. And we definitely feel fighting the long fight, not the good fight, but it's not quick. And so, thank you for your words of encouragement.
Thanks, Plato.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Yes, there's one more.
There's one more.
And this question is from Rita Johnston from the University of Miami Libraries. She writes, very interesting presentation. You said that you don't believe the administration at FSU will adopt your model. Do you believe that administration will adopt some of your ideas to support innovation?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, they already have. The unit that I lead and the unit that Lindsay leads are essentially, you know, like smaller versions of this, smaller teams of functional specialists that, I mean, there are some elements missing, the co-directorship, the shared leadership, and so on. But it's like Lindsay said, we already have this happening at our library and at a smaller scale. And also, I'd mentioned what I did before about the formation of these cross-divisional functional teams. I think that that will also provide an opportunity to implement some of our ideas.
We're lucky to, at this point right now, both be reporting to our dean and have a lot of support for doing creative and innovative work. And so in a lot of ways, we can collaborate, we can work together. We have that space and that support. It's about the formality of it that we were really trying to put into place, but we're still going to work together and do cool things together.
You said in your presentation that the external changes is faster than the capacity for change in the library. I think that's a challenge to us all to increase the capacity for continuous change in the libraries. So then I would like to thank you very much, Lindsay and Devin, for a great presentation.